The Nile is the longest river in the world, flowing more than 4,000 miles through Africa to the Mediterranean Sea. Every summer, the Nile floods because of heavy rainfall in Central Africa. When the floods recede, they leave behind silt, a layer of rich topsoil that transforms the otherwise barren desert into fertile farmland. It was along this river, and because of it, that Egyptian civilization rose and flourished some 5,000 years ago. The Nile was Egypt's most precious resource, but Egyptians had to cooperate to make it work for them. They built complex networks of irrigation ditches to channel the Nile's life-giving waters to their fields. Their need to work together was an important motivator for Egyptians to unite under a single government. Ancient Egypt was made up of two regions, Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north. About 3,100 BC, Menes, the king of Upper Egypt, united the two regions. Menes and his successors used the Nile to keep the nation united. Government officials traveled up and down the river, keeping watch even over the most distant settlements. When necessary, barges carried armies to trouble spots where they would quickly restore order. Egyptian agriculture also revolved around the Nile. In the earliest days, Egyptians relied solely on the river's natural flooding to irrigate the soil. Later, they developed more sophisticated irrigation systems. They dug a series of ditches to capture the floodwaters. When the floods receded, the water remaining in these shallow basins could be used to grow crops. Another important advance was the development of the shaduf, a mechanical irrigation device that made it easier for farmers to bring water from the river to their fields. With a bucket at one end and a weight at the other, the shaduf works like a seesaw. The bucket is lowered into the Nile. Then the counterweight helps the farmer raise the bucket, which can then be poured into irrigation canals to water the fields. The invention of the shaduf led to a dramatic increase in irrigated land. With these methods, the Egyptians grew a variety of crops. Grain, used to make bread and beer, was the main staple. Other food crops included onions, grapes, dates, figs, and pomegranates. Flax was grown to make clothing. Papyrus, a riverbank reed that can grow 15 feet tall, served several important uses. Egyptians made a paper-like material by beating papyrus into flat strips and binding them together. Scribes kept records on these papyrus sheets by using hieroglyphics, a system of picture writing. Papyrus was also used to make various kinds of boats, including sailboats and barges. The Nile was Egypt's chief means of transport. Except between close villages, there were no roads. Virtually everything moved by boat. A steady flow of trade goods moved up and down the river. Gold, agricultural produce, animal hides, and other products from sub-Saharan Africa increased the pharaoh's wealth. The wealth that the Nile generated allowed the pharaohs to erect great buildings and monuments. The pyramids of Giza are the largest stone structures ever built. At one time, historians believed that the Egyptians used only slave labor to build the pyramids. But today they think that some of the laborers were off-season farmers. The Nile's annual floods made farmers eager to earn money during the 3 months that their fields were underwater. And bakers, carpenters, and water carriers helped support the large crews of builders. They built the pyramids using limestone and other materials found along the Nile. The history of ancient Egypt is tied to the Nile. For 5,000 years, the statues of the pharaohs have stood guard over Egypt. They are enduring monuments to the river and the civilization it helped create.